Everything. All right, yes, so as mentioned, I'm Christina from Neolth. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Specialist here, so I've been working with Neolth for about almost 2 years now. I started as a student ambassador with the company and an intern and kind of worked my way up here. So I'm a graduate student. I'm pursuing my master in social work, and I'm just, very passionate about mental health, especially youth mental health. So that's kind of what led me here. I will let my other two presenters kind of introduce themselves, and then we can just dive in, I guess. So Eliza or Navia, go ahead.
All right, hi, I'm Eliza. I've been with Neolth for, like Christina, about 2 years. I started off as like a student ambassador, and I guess that's still my position, but this summer, I was like the lead intern for the outreach and marketing group, and then I'll be continuing in the fall with like outreach and engagement, but I'll also be leading the outreach subcommittee just for the whole student ambassador program. So yeah, it's been really cool to like work with everyone and kind of promote those values in mental health, and I'll pass it off to Navia.
Hi everyone, my name is Navia and I'm one of the outreach and marketing interns for Neolth. I was basically an intern for this last summer, and then now I'm going to be continuing into the fall as a student ambassador, and I'm also going to be leading like a social media subcommittee as well. And part of the reason why what kind of inspired me to join Neolth was mainly because of my own like experiences with mental health, and also like observing a lot of my like peers and family friends and their struggles with mental health. And I honestly believe that there really needs to be kind of like a stigma erased around it. And I think Neolth is kind of an excellent app and an excellent like organization, which is kind of seeking to help improve the mental health of so many students.
All right, so yes, today we're going to be presenting on youth mental health, digital mental health, and at the end I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about Neolth as a company. So stay tuned for that. But Eliza and Navia will be doing most of the talking today, so I will let them kind of jump right in.
All right, so first off, with this webinar, we want to talk about combating mental health misconceptions. We know that the field has been like, I guess, like a really tentative topic for a lot of students. So it's really good to clear up what's like the most accurate information for students to manage their mental health versus maybe some like misconstrued ideas that we want to combat. So what doesn't mental health consist of, and how can we separate these accurate facts from these inaccurate representations, whether that's in the media or just like circulated through word of mouth. So first off, many believe that the representation of mental health in a person is only portrayed through a certain set of characteristics. So maybe that might look like extreme sadness versus extreme happiness in a person. However, one's well-being can be differently exhibited and treated than others. So that's really like the first idea that a lot of students, or just like a lot of populations, tend to, I guess, like misrepresent or really just not really interpret as well. They may notice that, oh, like maybe one symptom is attributed to this, or maybe one sign is linked to only this, but really there's like a really diverse like set of portrayals that are out there. So that kind of leads into like this black and white picture of it versus being on the continuum. So first off, I think it's really important to understand that these emotions aren't mutually exclusive. So one's day or like one's progress may differ from like another day, or like their progress that they may make at like another certain period in time. So really just like the intensity of a certain event or action can affect like a person's emotions in different ways, and that's really important to understand. So this can be exhibited in like different people, of course, in different ways, because this often reflects on people in like with like different experiences. So they might feel like the intensity of an emotion like more than others, and it's really good to acknowledge that. So a condition wouldn't really cause someone to feel only one certain way or show one certain sign. It really just depends on the person itself, like their lived experiences, kind of like their current values as well. So there's really just like a lot of factors that go in and like affect that person's like representation as well. So as for treatment and progress, there really is no single treatment or just one like objective treatment that can help someone in treating their mental health condition or managing their well-being. I think a lot of students tend to get wrong that like, oh, that maybe there's like a one size like fits all kind of like approach to everything. But again, it really depends on like the person's background. So there I guess like certain methods, or like even a mix of methods such as like therapy, medication, and exercises, they can be used for recovery. And again, this really depends on the person and their preferences as well as their needs at that time. So as for consistency, as I kind of stated with the black and white versus continuum representation of mental health, it really just is not a linear process. And even though like individuals might seek like different ways to manage their symptoms, their progress can obviously differ throughout different days. It's normal to experience all of these like lows and like different highs as well, but this is still vital to like their steps in recovery. And of course, it's a typical part of the process, and it'll only help that person to grow even further with like their mental health and seeking ways that work best for them. So again, it's kind of like these people go through like different like trials, and they want to see what helps them in like managing their mental health best. So again, there really isn't like one specific solution. It really just depends on the individual. And as you can see here, there are a lot of different factors that go into mental health. So again, it really just isn't impacted by one like category or one set of factors, but as you can see here, it can be represented through like personal values, interpersonal values, or like how they interact with their society, or just like the relationships with people, as well as social and cultural values. So again, as it says, it's very complex and it can be affected by many certain external aspects. So this could be from stressors to their own like self-esteem, to just their independence as a person, or how they desire to do different stuff. But basically, as we go to the personal category, so some examples of things that may impact their mental health as well might be like, as I said, just their independence as a person. Like, do they want like certain autonomy during like different things, or do they want like the support of others? Also like space for inner development, and it also just depends on like what kind of surroundings they prefer to be in, their sense of belonging in a variety of areas, as well as oneself, and as well as just like being in touch with reality and just their personal perspective. So really, I think what's most important to emphasize here is just like their perspectives, or like their take on different situations, how they want to manage it. And of course, this is molded by like their personal experiences and some of their lived values as well. And of course, there are different ways of like coping with different situations and just stress management in general. As for interpersonal factors, so this really is just like effective communication. So how well they're able to really just build that bond with like other people, and how they're able to, I guess, like portray themselves as a person to others, and how well like that aligns with the values of others. So this can also be seen through being able to convey these needs to others in respectful ways, and even like building these intimate and trusting connections with other people. So I think that does go into like effective communications, because it really just depends on like how they represent like those values, or how they decide to communicate with others. Also balancing separatedness versus connectedness, and setting the right boundaries between those relationships. And of course, that depends on like the compromises that are set between people, as well as just like the personal preferences that they have in like setting those boundaries. So lastly, for the third category, we have social and cultural. So examples of these can include like their surroundings and their greater community. So maybe where they live, or like maybe like a certain setting that they're constantly in, such as like work or school. Even the resources that are accommodative and accessible to them can even have an impact on it, because if they don't really have like an access to like a certain resource, or maybe something that they may need for like guidance, then of course this can affect their mental health in some way. Diversity and inclusion is also a really big factor, especially in areas of like really diverse and like widespread demographics. Of course, you want to kind of accommodate to those different values between like certain groups. Also familiarity with your environment, just knowing how to like navigate through it, and knowing how to seek the proper support systems in order to do that, and having a sense of the real world and your interactions. So I guess that kind of goes with like interpersonal, so separating like or balancing separatedness and connectedness, and also seeing those like boundaries between like yourself and the real world as well. All right, so before we jump into the rest of the webinar, we thought it would be a really cool idea to kind of have everyone do like a really brief self-reflection at the beginning, just because we think it'll, like the ideas you'll gain from this will be kind of like a foundation into what you'll learn and what we'll be getting into for the later parts of the presentation. So this is an exercise that's actually directly from the Neolth app. So we hope that like also spark interest in you downloading the Neolth app and using it on a daily basis for really just anything or like any preferences that you have with your mental health management. So what we want you guys to think about throughout this presentation about youth mental health is how can you apply those reflective values through this activity to what you learned today? And with the discussions about mental health, how might social media and online platforms be a role in the way you think? So from the concepts on the previous slide that I just talked about, you can apply each of these sides of mental health to your own experiences through this activity. And this is completely open-ended. So there really isn't like a right or wrong answer. This could be taken in like any direction that you want. All right, so we're gonna take just a few minutes to do this. We might like go on just for the sake of time, but you guys can like completely do this on your own as well. So this is called the core values exercise. So the first step is to one, list 3 to 5 qualities that you already have. And this is really just a way for you to assess like your current experiences or like the current attributes that you have. So if your family or friends were describing you, what would they say about you? And this can be like a chance for you to pick out like the qualities that you enjoy most about yourself or others, or like qualities that you want others to cherish and really like point out as well. For number 2, this asks you to list 3 to 5 qualities that you want to have. So this can or cannot be the same qualities that you already have. But the point of this step is to really just compare your current qualities to your ideal qualities and your core values, and really just think about how you can change like your behavior or your actions in the future to meet these core values. And then the last step would be to think of a small change that you can make to achieve those qualities. So this change should align with like your core values. And of course, you can feel free to write it down so you remember it better. And for this, you can think of like the following questions. So which old patterns of thinking or behavior might be preventing you from engaging in this new behavior, and how might you overcome these obstacles? And you can record out how often you do this new behavior throughout the next month, and you can note any new challenges that you may change to find yourself doing or facing. So you can take like a few minutes to try it yourself, and you can type it like on your phone or like get a piece of paper and write down your values and qualities on it, just whatever works for you. So after you're done with that, it should really only take a few minutes. You can do like the bonus at the bottom of the screen. So there's a QR code and a link where you can record all of your 3 responses to each step of the activity. And this can, of course, be kept anonymous if you're comfortable with that. But if you do choose to record your answers, there's a possibility that you can also have it be posted on Neolth's platforms, but this is of course completely up to you. So yeah, you can take like a few minutes to do that, but we'll most likely be continuing on with the presentation while like you do this in the background.
Yeah, I would say for anybody watching after the fact too, you can still scan that QR code and upload them after the webinar whenever you watch. I think it'll be, you know, really interesting what other people say, and you can kind of share that out later if that's something everyone's interested in. But yeah, I encourage everybody to share if you feel comfortable doing that, but we'll just move on for the sake of time.
All right, so this kind of bounces off the activity and the information that we just mentioned. So we want to jump into common mental health strategies that a lot of students use to manage just like their well-being and balance their routine. So of course, as we said earlier, preferences are different for everyone based on their individual needs, but sticking to a common routine and even trying out like a mix of methods to see what works for you, these have all proven to be effective in managing your mental wellness over time. So first off, we have just therapy. So this can typically involve a form of counseling, and there's different types of this, as well as medications if needed. The second is really just balance. So there's a really big emphasis with balancing your mental health with physical, emotional, and social health as well. As we said, it's not just necessarily mental health that you would need to emphasize, but really just all aspects of your health are integral in maintaining the whole side of your mental health. Connections, so staying in touch with close support systems, and a sense of open communication can also help to improve your mental health and really just boost empathy between people, because you have that like support system that you can always like refer to and bounce back from over time. And of course, we have digital, which is the bulk of what we'll be talking about today. So in terms of digital mental health, this really just implements a variety of these typical past methods, but it's offered on a virtual format. So this allows for more flexibility with providers, since it's offered for a really flexible schedule, usually all day, and you can really just like use any of these activities on demand. All right, so we have mental health online influences. So as it says on the slide, we often see all of these impacts and different trends that emerge from these young groups' presence online, just like yourself. So we want to talk about the specific causes and the specific phenomena that is really just going on behind these online influences. So first off, we have social skill development as like a really big, I guess, like branch off of this. So online environments are really, really different from personal interactions. So a really big consequence of this and just being adapted to like online surroundings over time is that younger groups may not adopt like these really specialized and important skills that are needed for basic communications with others in person. This can also root to negative ideas and interactions. So because the online world is so accessible, this creates like more opportunities for just like being anonymous as a user and exposure to more audiences online. So users, of course, may be a larger target for potential cyberbullying and spreading these negative ideas. So misinformation, like that's an example of that, and it tends to happen like pretty frequently online. Isolation from peers is a really big one, and I think this also is kind of overlapped with social skill development. So social health and relationships with others can often suffer from the constant use of social media, especially if that person is becoming too dependent on online sources. They might gradually end up like isolating themselves from like other people their age, or just like really just missing out on like their interactions with other people in person. So lastly, but it's not limited to just this, we have making comparisons. So what's really important to understand is that online users only tend to detail the positive events and high points of their life or just themselves as a person, which can be greatly misleading for viewers and the standards online. This really creates like false images that people may tend to follow, but of course this is unrealistic, and really just like referring to online sources is really not like the best way to go, because it's not like the fuller image of everything.
All right. So basically, I felt like the single most thing that has been really negatively impacting a lot of like students' mental health has been basically social media. So with over 4 billion users and counting, it's pretty evident that social media has taken up the world by storm, and it has really become like a very vital part of our everyday lives. I mean, we know that we get up, we immediately check our social media, we want to take a picture with our friends, we immediately post it to social media. You want to keep up with pop culture, your favorite artists, whatever, you're probably going to be on social media as well. So social media has really been regarded for its ability to connect and unite people from all over the world. That was kind of like the main intention of the app. However, in more recent years, social media has really drew a lot of criticism for its negative impact on users' mental health, especially that of teenagers and young adults. So I felt like 3 single most ways that people's mental health or teenagers' mental health has really been negatively impacted by social media has been anxiety, body image and self-esteem, and depression. As for anxiety, online therapy reports that mental health symptoms that's the most experienced upon social media usage is anxiety. And as for body image and self-esteem, over 88% of women tend to compare themselves to the images that they see on social media, according to a study by Emotion Matters. And as for depression, depressive symptoms of adolescents from grades 8 to 12 have increased by 33% as social media grew in popularity in years 2010 to 2015, according to the Child Mind Institute. So starting off with social media and how it contributes to anxiety, one way that it contributes to a lot of anxiety among teenagers is through addiction. As one typically spends more time on social media, they really began to develop an addiction. They feel like they cannot live without checking their social media accounts, and this can cause a lot of anxiety when spending time away from your phone. For example, a lot of people get really addicted to getting a lot of likes on social media or seeing what everyone's commenting on their posts. So it's like as soon as they post something, they feel like they have to keep, refreshing their phone, keep checking it. And it can also bring upon a lot of anxiety. And let's say their phone dies and they suddenly can't see like who's liking their posts or who's commenting their posts or whatever. That causes a lot of anxiety and stress among them. The second form of anxiety that can really be triggered by social media is social anxiety. When one tends to spend a lot of time on social media, they kind of get really used to communicating with others through a cellular device, especially by likes, comments, direct messages. And basically they start to lack any real face-to-face interactions with other people. Therefore, they're kind of likely to suffer from social anxiety and struggle talking to others in person. And that's kind of much easier to kind of talk to someone through social media because you don't really have to show your face. You can also think before you type something. And if you get really, really used to that because you're spending all your time on social media, you might even forget how to really talk to someone in person, and you're probably going to struggle with social anxiety much more. Another way that social media negatively impacts mental health is mainly through depression. And one quote says, social media is training us to compare our lives instead of appreciating everything we are, and no wonder why everyone is always depressed. So there are many different ways that social media can contribute to depression among teenagers and young adults. One of the ways is comparison. So social media users may come across pictures of their peers or even strangers enjoying a luxurious vacation, wearing designer clothes and bags, and just really having fun with all their friends and family. Constantly seeing others appearing to live their best lives can result in comparison and a feeling of inferiority. One may envy those whose lives appear to be perfect on social media or on camera, wishing that they were as successful and happy as them. They are so focused on someone who has more rather than appreciating everything that they already have. And this is really triggered by social media because, like Eliza has said earlier, people don't really post the negative things in their life. They're always posting about the positives, their successes. So really social media is not giving you the entire picture. However, constantly seeing people happy, going on to do great things, having fun, it might make you feel like, oh, I wish my life was as cool as theirs, or I wish I had what they had, even though you already have so much. And that is something that can make you really feel upset, and it could even lead into depression over time. Another way that social media contributes to depression is through loneliness. Anyone who's heavily addicted to social media spends hours and hours each day, whether scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, or any other app. Basically, they're going to be isolated in their rooms entirely. So they stop hanging out with their friends, spending time with their families, and having, any face-to-face interactions with real people. And this can really exhibit feelings of loneliness and depression because basically you're spending all your time on a screen, and it's like all of your life is basically virtual or on the internet. And even if they are spending time with others, they find themselves really struggling to avoid checking their social media. And kind of one thing that I thought of was think of a time when you and your friends were hanging out and everyone was on their phones rather than talking to each other. And I find this really, really common, not only from my own experiences with kind of just seeing it really happen among peer groups, is that even though there's a whole group of friends and they should be talking to each other, having fun with each other, everyone is just glued to their phones, checking something on social media. And it's kind of like a lot of that real face-to-face interaction has been lost, and people are not really caring for others, not really showing as much compassion, as much care as they once would before, mainly because they are so addicted to social media and they feel like they just cannot, take time away from their phone to actually go and talk to someone. And the last way that social media is contributing to depression is through a lot of obsession. So often users of social media can really become obsessed with receiving followers, likes, and comments, as they kind of feel like it is a sign of popularity and likability. So sometimes when you post something and it did not receive the attention that you felt that it deserved, you can really feel upset. You might think, oh, am I not beautiful enough? Am I not good enough? And then you might even start comparing yourself to others who are receiving more likes and comments than them, and then you might feel inferior to them. In reality, social media likes and comments don't really mean much, as a lot of them are kind of like fake. A lot of them are kind of like fueled by an algorithm, but a lot of people really feel pressured because they feel like it's kind of like a social status, or it'll make them more popular. So they really become obsessed with receiving that likes, and sometimes when they are not happy with that result, then they might really feel like bad about themselves. They might even feel depressed, and it can kind of just worsen their mental health as a whole. And then the last main way that social media is contributing to a lot of teenagers' mental health in a negative way is by impacting their body image and self-esteem. I find this to be the most common one, especially among a lot of teenage girls. So one way is kind of by affecting body image and confidence. So just like how social media can perpetuate users to compare their lives, it can also perpetuate others to compare their bodies. So when you're always like looking at celebrities, influencers, or even your friends posting pictures and they're like showing off a perfect body and they have flawless skin, it can really trigger some insecurities and self-confidence within yourself. You might wish that you looked more like those on social media, and you might feel like ugly, disgusting, or not good enough. And honestly, this can really just impact your physical health as well, because once you're kind of constantly being exposed to pictures of people who look perfect, you might feel pressured to fix your own appearance because you want to look as beautiful as that person that you see on social media. So a lot of people, let's say they see like an Instagram model in a bikini, or who is looking like perfect in a way. A lot of young girls have been starting to like engage in excessive diets and workouts to really lose weight. And what has kind of been happening is this can result in like a severe obsession over body image because they're excessively working out, and it can even lead to eating disorders, purging disorders, and even like intense body dysmorphia. It could also result in feelings of frustration, anger, and just overall unhappiness with themselves. A lot of girls are kind of tempted to change themselves to fit in with this social media beauty standard, which is honestly really unrealistic, and it's really disguised by heavy editing, Photoshop, and plastic surgery. But even despite this whole like controversy about editing pictures, photoshopping pictures, it also kind of shows that people are so pressured to look perfect on social media because they care about other people's opinions and as a whole. So it kind of shows that how social media is like making everyone obsessed with their physical appearance and always looking perfect, and also always making their life appear perfect as well, even though it's not. And it slowly becomes like a kind of like an obsession, which can really negatively impact your mental health over time.
All right, so just bouncing off of all of that discussion with how social media can be a really big factor in impacting mental and physical health. So I wanted to briefly talk about the romanticization of mental health. So this is basically just glorifying mental health conditions, and why it's just like a really harmful concept in general, and why it occurs among young audiences online. So this really just uses a lot of like exaggerated details to describe like the true matter of an urgent topic and make these mental health conditions seem more attractive or maybe like more desirable than they actually are. So basically it's really a like harmful form of downplaying the experiences of what real patients or individuals may have to go through. So how this is done, it's really just by showing like an incomplete picture or an inaccurate representation of what a mental health condition may look like. So again, as I said, it's really just downplaying its effects and how it's represented on people, and just making really inconsiderate statements to undermine others' experiences. And this can be seen to a lot of people as being really like invalidating. So why this occurs, it's really for a variety of reasons, but a really huge one is that these mental health conditions may simply just be really misunderstood in its severity or how it may affect those with the condition, and just the actual nature of the struggles or how it's managed. So really just a really big lack of like education on others' part. So the media also has like a really big role in this. So a lot of TV shows and recent movies, they kind of like perpetuate like a quote unquote lighter idea of it while leaving out these really critical details about what these mental health conditions actually entail. So as for its effects, there are a lot of there's like a really big range of effects that can happen as a result of this like harmful portrayal. So firstly, unhealthy and negative outcomes in how mental health is managed can result from this. So maybe an individual may see as like one method or maybe like one management style as being maybe like a useful tactic for them, even though it may be like ultimately harmful for them in the long run. It also spreads like really false ideas about how various conditions paint it as like either desirable or, as I said, an attractive experience, even though like it technically is misinformation and it shouldn't be treated, or it shouldn't really be like taken in as being accurate because it's obviously not. So yeah, there's really just a lot of factors that go into this like glorification of mental health, but there are a lot of ways to also stray away from this. All right, so we wanted to point out this really like critical statistics. So according to the International Telecommunication Union, 71% of youth globally were actively using the internet in 2020. So we wanted to point this out because this number is only expected to grow from here with the popularity of social media platforms, its accessibility, and its convenience with a world-based network. So the question that really sprouts from this is, how can social media and digital platforms be used for the betterment of youth mental health, especially because even more students and youth are logging into these platforms every year. So these are just briefly the advantages and disadvantages of digital mental health. So I listed 3 for each. So the first one for advantages is really just the accessibility. So as I mentioned at an earlier point, all of these services of virtual or digital mental health platforms, they're available at any point and all day without restrictions for the most part. So these features can also be personalized to be suited towards the user's preferences. So really just like if a user desires like this feature over another, they can obviously tailor that to them because of how flexible the online networks have been made to be. So it can also be used at really or any location, or at least most locations. So these platforms can be accessed on a variety of compatible devices in most locations as long as it's supported. So, and a really big plus for this is that a user may be able to receive location-based suggestions if they choose to share that information with the app. And data systems, so certain algorithms and analytics can be used by the program or the app that can suggest different practices or different advice to users that they can engage in from the data that's collected by the app itself. So for example, this can range from habits or maybe different preferences or when the user likes to use the app. So really all of that content can be tailored to how they use the app routinely. So as for the disadvantages, this can range from responsiveness. So maybe if the individual is going through a time of crisis, depending on the time or availability, a resource or that appropriate contact may not be able to attend to the user's concerns in time. Confidentiality concerns can also arise, so like things dealing with privacy, because the app or program is bound to use like the user's data in some way. And there might be like a lot of concerns and like problems arising from this because users want to know like how this sensitive information is being used, or maybe if it pertains to their health, which is obviously like another sensitive topic, they don't really know how it will be used by the app or if it will be released to like other parties. And missed signs is a really big disadvantage of this. So essentially technology is still fairly limited in its abilities to treat any condition or really just detect anything in an individual. So this means that certain signs may be overlooked that a regular provider could detect and treat if the patient were to experience that in person. All right, so we wanted to talk briefly about digital mental health advocacy, and we listed a few tips that, of course, aren't limited to just this, but we think that these are still pretty essential for youth and just any student in general. So as for taking part in advocacy, we want to make mental health resources more accessible, more inclusive, and open to all groups over these online networks. And we want to use language that is destigmatizing and validating for every individual and their feelings and experiences as well. It's really important to make sure that all of this information that we impart to others is accurate and as representative of the topic as much as possible. So this really intersects with inclusivity and just being as open as possible. So this overall message should be clear, as the main goal is to increase awareness and education to others. If one chooses to discuss their personal experiences, transparency can be a really big plus because it may help others to realize that they're not alone and other people are experiencing the same accounts as them. And this also can help with building a personal connections. And again, as I said, assures them that they aren't alone. And you can also be an advocate for yourself as well when managing your mental health online. So this might look like limiting your use of mental or online platforms and increasing your social interactions with others outside of the screen. And of course, do not engage in harmful or negative content that may negatively impact your well-being. So in what to avoid for mental health advocacy online. So of course, do not disclose overly personal information about yourself or anyone's personal experiences with mental health. And of course, avoid stigmatizing language or statements that aren't as inclusive of the groups that you are addressing. You would preferably want to avoid making generalizations about a mental health condition or those that may have the specific condition. Of course, try to validate others' emotions and experiences as much as possible. So this might include not making any negative labels that may downplay their feelings or reflect on them in a negative way. And also be mindful of not using toxic positivity to bring a topic to light. So of course, this also crosses over into invalidating others' experiences, and there is like a lot to it, but of course we want to keep this really brief. So these are really just the main points that we have for now, but I think it's pretty understandable and accessible by anyone. So yeah, I think it's like just really good to try to be an advocate for yourself as well as others online. All right, so we have this really quick chart about how to become an advocate for mental health well-being in scale. So firstly, we have mental, then individual, so as a whole, your close network, your local community, as well as online platforms. So firstly, with just like the mental aspect of it for yourself, it's always good to reassure yourself that digital and social media platforms, they don't always show the full image. They mainly show a lot of the high points or positive aspects of a person's life or maybe an event that they're part of. And content is really just often handpicked to show those aspects, as I said. So of course, consider your social health as well, and foster those outside relationships as well, because they can help with amplifying just your social health, which can contribute to like an improved mental well-being. As a whole, or really just like as an individual in general, it's good to limit your exposure online to like harmful content and balance other aspects of your health management, such as physical and emotional health. You should also identify your other needs outside of the screen and properly attend to them and determine what is just best for your entire well-being, because as I said, mental health really just focuses on other aspects of your health, and it's really good to make sure that all of those are balanced as much as you can. As for your close network, it's always good to discuss your comfort with using digital platforms and your habits as necessary to those that you can trust, or maybe some other support systems that you have. You can also feel free to ask for suggestions on managing your mental health routines, as well as your online routines. And you can always provide support to others when needed. As for your local community, you can always engage in local or community initiatives and efforts that can aid in educating populations about digital health and helping them to be more well-informed. So this may look like collaborating with schools and partnering with other just like larger bodies in your community to inform younger groups about how to avoid these harmful digital habits and this harmful content as well. And of course, just with the broader online platforms, as I said, it's good to avoid stigmatizing language or circulating any negative ideas towards mental health conditions. As we also said, be as inclusive as possible when discussing the subject and try to foster as positive and open space around mental health as you can. So I'll quickly run through this, but these are the projected digital mental health trends. So firstly, we have focusing on skill development. So as for platforms, as I said, because it is becoming like even more flexible with the use of the internet, an example of this is that apps can assist the user in creating healthier habits for themselves, which can tackle the causes of their mental stress or pressure along with the actual symptoms. So again, because it accommodates to the user, it'll really just help to like it'll really just like help the user to like focus on like themselves instead of using like a more general approach. You also may have like the ability to track your different mental health symptoms over time. Of course, with social media, a lot of campaigns have been like occurring online with like different apps. So because like more individuals in these younger generations are generally a lot more aware of how mental health is setting an impact, social media has been like the most user-friendly way of spreading these messages to as wide of a scale as possible. Again, as we mentioned earlier, all-day accessibility and care has been rooted from digital mental health. So routines and like therapy suggestions and other advice by the user's provider can be communicated via the app. And this can accommodate to a lot of different geographic areas, time zones, and just general access to these opportunities. And the last one is just the ability to be anonymous. So discomfort can be tackled by using these anonymous systems and these settings as well. And it also plays a role in equalizing the field because people may ultimately be more comfortable in using the app and finally like taking a stand with like advocating for themselves. So yeah, this really just makes sure that all users can take part in treatment at their own convenience without feeling like they're being like stigmatized or being looked down upon.
All right, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about Neolth as a company and, kind of taking off from what Eliza and Navia have all talked about with the impacts of social media on young people's mental health and how these digital platforms like Neolth can help. So our company was founded by healthcare and education professionals. Our CEO is a neuroscientist who worked as a therapist and a teacher with young adults and teens. And she saw that, teens are spending a lot of time on their phone. We know this. I'm sure we all use our phones a lot. And, it just makes sense to have kind of a digital solution that's right there in your pocket all the time to help you deal with your own mental health and take care of yourself. So we are a digital mental health company, obviously. We've created this app completely in partnership with students. So I know Eliza and I mentioned being a part of the ambassador program a couple of years ago, and that is sort of how we developed the app. So the student ambassadors acted as, able to give feedback to the founders and the designers of the app so that everything is student approved down to the colors, the language used. So it's something that, we actually want to use and is actually valuable to us. So essentially what we provide is more on the preventative mental health side. I'm sure you've all heard of, the telehealth, teletherapy apps and things like Headspace with meditation. We don't do therapy, we just do kind of the preventative practices. So we provide stress management and relaxation practices. And we also have, as you can see here on this little screenshot, a lot of video content that helps to educate young people about mental health and reduce the stigma around it. So all of our practices are evidence-based, created by health and education professionals. And we've seen, really successful reductions in stress and different mental health symptoms in just a few weeks. So we really pride ourselves on working with the students and developing something that's really helpful to them. I'll mention too, just briefly, we also work with teachers and school staff to kind of implement it into school curriculum, but students are also able to just download the app and use it on your own free will. So I have just a quick little video to kind of give you an overview of Neolth. This is a video that our partners at Uplink and the World Economic Forum and UNICEF just recently made for us. So hopefully we can get some sound in here. This will work. All right, so yeah, that was just kind of a brief overview of all of the things we do. Obviously, you know, we're trying to keep this a little bit brief, so if you're interested in learning more, you can check out that video or any of our social medias or anything else to learn more. But I just wanted to mention quickly a couple of things since we talked about kind of the advantages and disadvantages of digital mental health, and how Neolth is kind of different from a lot of these other platforms, so that we address some of those disadvantages and make it, you know, a more accessible and more equitable tool to use. So as I mentioned, the accessibility, because we're a digital platform, obviously that just makes things more accessible because anyone, anywhere can use our platform. So it's available on the Apple App Store, Google Play, and you can use it on your computer on the desktop. We also tend to work with schools so that the school will kind of pay for the tool for all of their students and students can access it for free. If your school doesn't use Neolth, we encourage you to advocate for it, or you know, you can contact us to try and bring it to your school. If not, you can also pay $10 a month on the App Store for it, so anybody really can use it. I also wanted to mention the confidentiality. As Eliza mentioned, that can be a disadvantage to a lot of these apps, but our app is completely de-identified data. So all of your data, as soon as you sign up and are in there, the only thing we see is your email, usually only for the school. So we have no idea, you know, which account is yours necessarily, and your information is completely confidential. So any mental health symptoms or things that you're inputting in the app, we're not using that data for anything sketchy. We're de-identifying it immediately. Next, it is personalized. So I think as the video mentioned, as soon as you sign up, you take a personalization survey where you can report your own mental and physical health symptoms, your stress levels, and we'll kind of figure out your stress style, which we'll give to you after the quiz, just to let you know kind of how you tend to cope with stress. And you can also just input, you know, your preferences on like types of practices, how often you want to use the app, and all of that goes into our algorithm to give you personalized content every month. So you do a quick little check-in every month, and you get new content that we suggest for you that we think will be most helpful for managing the symptoms and stress that you reported. And lastly, we are very responsive. So we have an AI system in place so that we can detect if people are in crisis and provide you a real-time referral to a variety of different crisis resources. A lot of times when we're working with schools, the schools will put in, you know, local resources, but we have things like Crisis Text Line and the Trevor Project, you know, free national resources that are either text lines, hotlines, peer with health professionals. So as you're inputting any thoughts or anything into the app, that is there for you. And that's also something you can access in the app at any time if you ever wanted to utilize those resources, but it will give you kind of a pop-up with a real-time referral if you're in crisis. So lastly, this is just kind of how you can sign up for the app. It's pretty simple. You can download it from the App Store, like I said, or if you go to cloud.neolth.com/signup. Anybody who signs up will receive a 60-day free trial. So we encourage you to download and sign up as an individual account when you get on there, and you'll get that 60-day free trial to test it out. Like I said, you'll complete the personalization survey as soon as you're on, and then it'll offer you kind of a tour of the platform, which we encourage you to take to get familiar with all of the different features we have, because there's a lot on there. And that's pretty much it. Then you can just start beginning to support your mental health and build your self-care practice into your daily routine. So we really hope that, you know, you take the time to check it out and just take care of yourselves and put that in your routine. You know, we talked about a lot of things that impact youth mental health today, and I think that our resources, among plenty of others, are really valuable in kind of helping you support your own mental health, even if you don't have access to as many resources that might be available to others. So that's all we have. Thank you all for listening. We're happy to go into questions now as well.
Christina, Eliza, I believe I said Eliza before, I'm really sorry, and Navya, thank you so much. Like, there was so much information to like process, and I've just like kind of reflected through the whole presentation. Mental health, just like those two words put together, I really feel like in this day and age, it's become a word that people just throw around without even knowing what it really is. And you've shown today, like, it's so much more than that. There's like a well of knowledge to be known about it. So I really believe this webinar is going to help a lot of people. So thank you again for partnering with us to do it.
I completely agree. That's part of our mission here at Neolth, and there's just so much misinformation online, like we talked about. So that's why we have the educational videos, and you can even check out our website. We have a lot of educational blogs and stuff like that to learn more about mental health. But yeah, we're also always open to questions. Anybody, feel free to email me about any questions about Neolth or just mental health in general as well.
Yeah, of course. We did get some questions in today with the registration forms. So I wanted to ask Brian and Griffin, do you guys still have the email from the Google form, or would you like me to read the questions out while saying your name? Whatever you're comfortable with.
Either way is fine. I think I still have that email. Like, I can pull it up. So
okay, cool. Brian, then you go ahead first, and then Griffin, you can go.
Just give me a moment to.
Yeah,
and also, I just wanted to like second what Shruti said about like how, like, this also gave me like a lot of new insight, particularly about like the social media aspect and how like things like toxic positivity can play into like and I think like into deteriorating mental health. And so that was really interesting. So I thank you guys obviously for for doing this. But let me try to find the email. Let's see what day was it? Shruti, do you remember do you remember when I filled out the form? Because that might, or actually maybe I could just search it up in my email. Maybe
yeah, I think if you just search up like gift of learning,
here we go.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so yeah, my first question was, okay, so this is, I guess, more specific to this area, right? But how can we collectively counteract unhealthy academic stigmas, be it from parents or peers in the Nova area, that push our generation to overwork and overstress?
That is a great question. It's probably very multifaceted. I would say personally, I think just trying to break down those things that maybe were pushed on you, and this culture that we live in of kind of overworking and glamorizing the grind. And I guess it's kind of like what we were saying about the romanticizing of mental health almost. I feel like older generations especially have always been like, well, I had to go through X, Y, or Z, so you do too, you know what I mean? So I think, it takes some breaking down of that on your own time, whether, spend some time journaling or just doing like kind of self-care practices, engaging with certain content that goes against that, whatever you have to do to kind of break that down in your own head. I think once you kind of strip that away, you can see and find, more value in your life. Like this exercise we mentioned at the beginning might be a good exercise for that as well. Just kind of focused on what are your core values when it comes to like academics and success. Why do you care about your grades? Why do you want to pursue the careers you want to pursue, and really get down to why at your core you think those are important rather than your parents told you to or society told you to. So I think if you can kind of get into those values for yourself, you can guide your way a little bit better with that at the driving force rather than other people or kind of external validation.
I was just kind of add that I feel like a lot of ways to kind of like destigmatize this is kind of like stop associating like your personal self-worth with kind of like how successful you are in life, whether it's like whether you go to a top college or whether you get great grades or whatever job position you have. And I feel like that really just doesn't like define like who you are as a person. I really feel like it's, your personality, your character that really would kind of like define your self-worth. But I feel like in the society we live with, especially like pushed by the media, by our parents, by everyone, it's always kind of like how well you do, how successful you are, you know, that is what defines you as a person. And I think we kind of need to like vamp that and just be like, no, that is just something on the side, but really like what defines you as a person is your character, kind of how you really are, rather than how like successful or good you are at something.
Brian, did you have another question?
Oh, yes, I did. I just wanted to make sure everybody was finished. But yes, I think that that's like I think that's a great message, and I think that's one that that we definitely need to spread. And so my second question was, oh yeah, so this is actually this is an interesting one. So do you believe that putting, because just a quick thing, like I actually like in my school, like I had actually been pushing like in the previous year, like in like last year to like put like to develop like mental wellness centers. I haven't been successful, but basically, do you believe that putting mental wellness centers and physical spaces in schools that students can go to in order to decompress, and like many schools and actually in Loudoun County do you believe that that would have an outsized positive impact on improving the mental health of the school community? So like actually like having like physical like spaces, like, you know, like I guess safe space, like, well, school's supposed to universally be a safe space, but like designated like mental wellness spaces. Do you think that would be beneficial?
I feel like it would. And my school kind of, we don't have like a whole physical like center for that, but we have like the back room in our counselor's office. So it's like if you ever need to cry or like scream or just let it all out, you're allowed to go like back in there. And I think something like that can really be helpful. Obviously, somewhere where it's really like private and isolated from like the rest of the students, and obviously just because you kind of need that like personal space. But I think like if someone's really like struggling mentally or they're panicking and it's happening in school when you're like in a classroom, it can get even worse when you feel like everyone's like watching you, or is everyone gonna like judge me? And sometimes you just need to like be alone, kind of like in a different center, a different area. And especially when you're like on the verge of like crying, on a breakdown of panics, whatever, I think that's something that you might just like really need like in a school, because it can kind of just help you like relieve whatever it is that you're going through. It's not going to like completely solve the problem, but I feel like it's different than, or it's way better than just like holding it in the classroom, and then that kind of like makes you feel like worse in a way. So yeah, kind of let's ask like Brian's question. I think having those kind of like physical spaces would definitely like help students' mental health.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I guess the one downside that I could possibly think of is that I know a lot of students tend to like not really forge like the closest connection with like their school counseling or their administration. Like they might just generally be uncomfortable seeking like a support system from them, especially with like the possibility that they may like tell that students like parents as well. So I feel like there might be some hesitancy there, but I feel like if you really just like hone it out and like develop it over time, I could definitely see it being like a really successful resource for students in schools. And I guess like just right off the bat, another really big advantage that I could think of with having these centers in schools is just that since the center will be like essentially tailored to like the school's body, like of course like each school is different, and like each school has like a set of students that they might be struggling with their mental health like in this aspect, or maybe like they like a factor that may be contributing to their students like decline of mental health is like this. Like of course it's different for every school, so I feel like just having those centers is like a good way to kind of like scope out and like see like, oh, like what is the student body, like what might they be like struggling with the most, and then they can kind of like accommodate those resources to them in that way. But yeah, I could definitely see like really big advantages, but yet a few downsides to both. But again, I feel like with like developing it over time, like I think it could be like a really successful way to like increase or just like boost mental health management with students.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, back to what you were saying, Brian, about schools, you know, supposed to be a safe space. I think we all know that it isn't for a lot of people. So having a safe space physically, even if you're going in there just to get away, I think is a great idea. And like Eliza said, it could be like a relaxation room and have different, things in there like fidget toys or like calming music, different things that people use to kind of de-stress, I think are all great ideas.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that that's something that most schools around here should get on to soon, hopefully. But yeah, and those were all the questions I had, by the way. So if anybody else had, but thanks, guys.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Brian. Griffin, did you have a question? I remember you had one question, right?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, I have one in the form. So first of all, thank you very much for sharing this presentation, and thank you very much for being here today. I am navigating to my question right now. Okay, here it is. My question, in your personal opinion, what is the most rewarding aspect of your personal work with regard to mental health, and why do you consider this aspect so rewarding?
I would say for me, the most rewarding part for me is, getting to see a real impact on students' lives based on, whether they're using the app or kind of engaging with our company. So like I said, we have student ambassadors and student interns all the time, which, by the way, if anyone wants to apply for our student ambassador program, we're always accepting new ambassadors into that. It's kind of a mental health advocacy program. But anyway, I think that the most rewarding piece is seeing, students kind of grow and gain confidence and just build their own mental health up while they're advocating for others' mental health. So we produce a lot of content that is like students sharing their personal stories with mental health that, hopefully reduces the stigma for readers and things like that. So I feel a lot of pride in the students that share their stories and just kind of helping them to take that step in their own journey and advocacy and better their own mental health.
Yeah, I'd say for me, the most rewarding thing is just like being able to take like something like a really small step towards something or like an even bigger movement. So I guess like an example of that for mental health advocacy, I'd say is just it really just takes like one voice to like be transparent or like speak about like their like vulnerable experiences, and that could really just like encourage like an entire movement of like people to like know that they're being heard and really just like know that their experiences, like they're not alone, like they definitely have other people that they can relate to and maybe like even be empowered to share their experiences even more, and basically take that issue, that common issue that they're talking about, and really just like elevate it for like for like an even more like widespread initiative, and really just like even making like the smallest observation and like I guess just like mental health disparities in your community, like maybe something is lacking or maybe there's not like an accessible resource for like a certain group of people, then you could really just take that small observation and really just like elevate it to create like an even larger like partnership or like community initiative that would really help to like solve that mental health crisis in that specific community. So I would really just say like really just contributing like all of these like small observations and small input, I feel like can really just like be so valuable and really just like take in so much for like the community that you're contributing to. So I really can see that being like a really empowering aspect for people that are like actively in like the mental health advocacy space.
All right. Thank you very much.
I actually had a question too, if you guys don't mind. I know we're going a little bit over the hour, but I feel like my question's like not as good as theirs. But I know social media is like one of like the biggest factors as you've talked about in your presentation. What are like, I guess, challenges to like advocating for mental health, like spreading it amongst the youth and like adults too? Like, what do you think another like more challenges, maybe like indirect ones are?
those challenges to kind of spreading the word about mental health and that narrative?
Sorry?
Yeah, I think, did you mean like challenges and spreading the word and changing the narrative?
I meant
about
like,
mental health?
right, I meant like, you know how social media is like a big factor of like propagating like negative effects of mental health, like what other factors like that of social media, but that might be more like indirect than social media, like not as big, but it's still present.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's tons of factors, you know, things like family influences and pressures like Ryan mentioned, or just society as a whole. I think definitely these kind of misconceptions that are spread throughout the media, not just social media, but and the ideas that maybe older generations have held about mental health. I mean, I'm sure we've all personally experienced it, that it's very stigmatized and maybe not even believed to be a real thing by a lot of older generations, or even just certain cultures and things like that. So I think it is very challenging to break that stigma and to educate people, especially people who have lived their whole lives thinking that's not a real thing, or that's just kind of how it works. So, you know, that's why we love working with young people, because I think more and more younger generations are more open to it and know what it's like. I mean, we all experience mental health difficulties, whether you have like a clinical diagnosis or not. So I think that while it is challenging, you know, empowering younger generations, and, you know, I appreciate all of you listening, because obviously you're invested in doing this kind of work and advocating, even if it's just for yourself, to your family, to your friends, your teachers, whoever it is, that really makes a difference, even if you can change one person's mind. So yeah, I think everything seems to be a challenge when it comes to kind of breaking down that stigma, but even small steps like that really do make a difference. So whether you're operating on a large scale like a company, or just doing it in your personal life, it's really important. And
No, I completely agree. Like not my personal experience, but my friend a couple of years ago, I think she started going to therapy, and then her parents just regarded like the therapist as a doctor, like a regular doctor. And I think a therapist is a type of doctor, but like you see the difference, right? Like I feel like a lot of like the older generation don't understand it the way we do, which is why I agree with you. Like this work we're doing, like no matter how many people there are, like if just one person starts making a change, it really can benefit those who are older than us, those who are younger than us. So once again, thank you so much. I know I saw the presentation where we all did. I could tell how much work went into it. So really, thank you so much.
yeah, thank you guys so much for having us.
Yeah, of course. So I think that's pretty much it. Everyone done with questions? Anyone have any more? We're good? Okay. So I think I'll stop recording now, and